Welcome to This Explainer. Look, today we're unpacking a pretty heavy but absolutely crucial topic. The signs a narcissist is completely done with you. Specifically, we're going to dive deep into the psychological playbook of highly controlling people and look at exactly what happens when their manipulative little schemes finally stop working. If you've ever had to deal with someone who constantly tries to dictate your reality, understanding this dynamic is going to be a real game changer for you.
So what actually happens when you just stop playing along? When you finally put your foot down and refuse to be manipulated? Well, the entire relationship dynamic shifts. And honestly, it shifts fast. But to truly understand why they react the way they do when you pull back, we first have to figure out what they were actively extracting from you in the first place. And that brings us to this incredibly important concept of narcissistic supply. Think of controlling people a bit like addicts constantly chasing a fix. Because they inherently lack their own natural self-esteem, they are basically psychologically empty on the inside, they have to extract it from others. They try to exploit you, molding you into this perfectly compliant, ideal source just to compensate for everything they're missing. But keeping them supplied? Man, the cost of compliance is steep. They basically expect it to be your full-time job to prop them up. Constant adoration required. Backing away from your own personal friends and allies? Expected. Agreeing with every single one of their opinions? Non-negotiable. And the absolute worst part is that you're supposed to just silently overlook their condescension, their bigotry, and never, ever confront their anger.
But eventually, human nature kicks in. You might start to protest, maybe push back a little, or just straight up stop cooperating. And as you stop playing along, the narcissist eventually has this little light bulb moment. They look at the situation and conclude, okay, this is not working out very well for me. They realize their grand exploitative scheme is failing. Now, a normal person might just say, all right, let's let bygones be bygones and move on, right? Yeah, no way. Instead, they enter what is essentially a punishment phase. To save face and hold themselves up as this grossly misunderstood victim, they feel an overwhelming, almost obsessive need to punish you. And that kicks off the clear signs they'll use to show you that they are, quote-unquote, done with you. Sign number 1, nonstop accusation and blaming. The very second they realize you're off script, they hit you with a relentless tidal wave of negativity. Suddenly you're the liar, you're the phony, you're the manipulator. But what's actually happening here? It's textbook projection. They are literally taking their own unacknowledged toxic flaws and projecting them directly onto you simply because they absolutely refuse to look in the mirror.
Then we get to sign 2, baiting you to argue. They will intentionally poke the bear with highly disagreeable comments or challenge every little thing you do. And this is entirely by design. They want you to finally snap and react defensively. Why? So they can point their finger and say, see, look how unhinged and difficult you are. It's a totally calculated move to let themselves off the hook.
Sign 3 is setting you up as the foil. Because they know the relationship is sinking, they proactively lay the groundwork to look like a total saint. They'll run around telling anyone who will listen how hard they tried to treat you right while painting you as this impossible, heavy burden. Every story needs a villain, right? Well, they've just cast you in the role.
And to really sell that innocent image, they adopt an extreme, almost comical victim position. They'll dramatically claim, look how miserable you have made my life. It's wild. They suddenly develop complete amnesia about their own toxic behavior. They act like your simple refusal to be used has completely ruined their world, entirely glossing over the fact that they created the mess to begin with.
Moving on to sign 4, treating you like an absolute nobody. This is a classic sour grapes maneuver. When you were supplying them, you were valuable to them. They wanted your approval. But the second you cut off that supply, they flipped the script. Now they act like you were never desirable to begin with, claiming there was nothing good about you and they were just messing with you all along.
Sign 5 is uncontained anger. They might have tried to keep a lid on it early on, hoping you'd be the angry one. But eventually, that simmering annoyance just boils over. We're talking outward rage, deep impatience, or incredibly petty passive-aggressive behavior. They simply cannot stomach the grudge they're holding over your non-compliance. You didn't let them control you, and now they want you to feel the heat.
And the next sign, seeking new supply elsewhere. Whether it's a romance, a family dynamic, or at work, they don't waste a second. They immediately hunt down a new target to exploit. And to really rub salt in the wound, they make sure to loudly elevate this new person's virtues right in front of you.
They'll gush about how incredibly nice this new person is, using them as a human weapon to devalue you even further. Look, when you are on the receiving end of this relentless agitation, it is absolutely exhausting. But we really need to take a step back and ask the big question. Why do they create such unbelievable chaos? What is genuinely driving this erratic, punitive behavior?
Well, it boils down to this simple truth. Internal chaos creates external chaos. Narcissists manufacture all this drama in their relationships because they are deeply, profoundly chaotic on the inside. With or without you, they have no idea how to manage life well. They refuse to take responsibility for who they are, so the storm they inflict on your life is really just an outward expression of their own internal disorder.
This brings us to what psychologists call the impossible task. And you really need to hear this. You are not the first person to fall out of their favor, and you definitely will not be the last. They're on this endless, exhausting treadmill looking for someone to make them feel great. But providing them with enough self-esteem, honestly, that is a genuinely impossible task for anyone to achieve. At the end of the day, you're dealing with psychologically empty individuals. They practically guarantee their own failure because they operate on a massive delusion. They actually believe that happiness comes from forcing other people to bend to their personal agenda. And because they fundamentally misunderstand where well-being comes from, they are literally doomed to repeat this exact same cycle with the very next person they meet.
So this leaves you with a pretty stark dichotomy, a real fork in the road. On one hand, you have the narcissist's parameters, living inside their cage, dealing with forced conformity and constant exploitation. On the other hand, your freedom, stepping away, setting firm boundaries, and just not playing the game anymore. You can mourn the loss of living inside their restrictive little world, or you can take a massive, deep breath and claim your freedom.
As you make it crystal clear that you are done being exploited, remember that their ultimate goal all along was to imprison you in their twisted version of reality. But here's the absolute truth. You do not need to be held inside anyone's cage. Period. That is a mindset you can and absolutely should embrace right this second. By walking away from their manipulation and refusing to play their games, you're making a profound choice. When you commit yourself to dignity, to respect, and to civility, you are throwing open the doors to finding your true, lasting peace. So let me leave you with this final thought. Now that you've seen the whole playbook and understand exactly how their control works, are you ready to stop being their supply, step out of the cage, and embrace the peace you actually deserve?